recording, not because the episode has started, just because Reena said, you should have been recording. This is the funny stuff. Because I said, this could be the whole podcast, me trying to cover up. Oh, no, I just realized, like, the whole thing was to cover up the duct tape roll that's holding my mic up. But by me talking about this, like, and showing it at the beginning of the episode, defeats the purpose. But why not? Why not behind the scenes, right? Here we go. So, by the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube and you're listening as a podcast, right now I'm covering up a duct tape roll. Here we go. Say something so I don't sound like I'm talking.
You can always edit it out and just use it for a promo clip.
No. Well, I guess that just sounds like a lot of work. But you're the producer here, so I will take your advice. That's why we're here. See what's going on here. Actually, I listen to the James Altucher show, and he often just starts the podcast raw, just like in the middle of a conversation or whatever. But sometimes he's got a little intro saying, hey, we just talked to this guy and we learned so much. So it goes, actually, but even when he does that, it still goes into just random rambling. So that's fine. Okay. Well, you want it? Okay. Yeah, you know what? I'll just do some random rambling for a bit. So the reason this mic is like this, I've had this for like 15 years for my voice acting. And the little attachment that attaches it to like a tripod is sort of worn off. And I had two of them and they've both worn out. I didn't know metal wears out, but I keep messaging them. They're like, oh yeah, we're not in stock. It'll be months and months. And so I'm just holding this on to my microphone stand with a duct tape roll. But I decided to cover up with a little piece of paper. I drew my logo on 2 seconds ago and Reena likes it. So welcome everyone to... What's my intro? Welcome, everyone, to Spark the Genius. I'm your host, Spark the Genius, and I'm here to spark the genius within you. Is that a good intro?
I like it.
Okay. I was also thinking, because it starts to get confusing when you say spark the genius, is it the person? Is it the podcast? So I was thinking of branding the word. So, for example, if it's Spark the Genius, the podcast, like the original Star Trek, the motion picture. So that's one option, or... what's the other option? Spark the Genius podcast without a the, or the Spark the Genius podcast, or the Spark the Genius show, so we're not limiting it to podcast. What do you like? Do you like Spark the Genius, the podcast?
I like Spark the Genius, the podcast, and I also heard that you were considering doing a radio show that was going to be called The Pod, and you were like, ooh, The Pod podcast.
What are you talking about? Where did you hear that?
Is that wrong? I think it was on, like, your episode with the digital nomad chick.
Maybe. That does sound familiar. Oh, no, I was just thinking because I got a radio job offer and we were talking about that. Maybe I said that. Why would I call it The Pod? I don't know. I should listen back to my episodes and see what I was talking about. But why? I wouldn't call it The Pod. I don't know. I've been trying to come up with a name for years. I used to be called other things, and now I'm like, I like this name. I don't know. I guess
Spark the Genius is good. I like it because it looks like a Watts lightning bolt, and Watts is my last name.
Oh, that's true. It is lightning bolt. What I like about it a lot is that if you type the word spark as an emoji, like on a phone, and the emoji comes up, it's a spark, but the spark is kind of like in the shape of an S. I mean, like it just works on so many levels. And then it kind of looks like a superhero thing, and it's visual. So when I was trying to come up with a name for myself, I was like, I want something visual that, you know, just lends itself to, oh, you see it and you know that's what it, like the Apple logo. It's Apple, but it's an apple. Like I don't like names where you have to, make like a Coca-Cola where you'd have to make the font all like the word itself isn't visual. I wanted to start backwards, and then I couldn't get like spark.com or anything. But so I thought, okay, I'm going to add something to it so I can own the .com. And then I thought also, what if I have a name that when you say it, it's actually useful? Like if you say your name John Smith, it's like that's not helping me. It's not a mantra or anything. But imagine if you had an inspirational saying like just do it or something, and every time you said your name, it's like a positive reinforcement. So if every time you say spark the genius, you're like, yes, I should spark the genius. I'm going to get up this morning and spark the genius. But it also works as like I am spark the genius, like a noun. But spark the genius, I guess within you it's the thing. But it's kind of like a genius idea. Like it seems to work on many levels. So that's why I'm with it for now. Who knows? Maybe I'll be like P. Diddy and change my name to Puff Daddy, or Snoop and Snoop Lion, and who knows if it'll keep changing. But this is what it is for now. And Watts is a good name.
Yes. It's funny. My husband and I were just talking about it last night on like names that you can't name your children because your last name is Watts. And like, there's a very common Hebrew name, and it's Dikla, which I don't know if it's pronounced Dikla or Dikla, but that's like definitely a name we couldn't name our kids, like Dikla Watts.
Why would Dikla Watts be worse than any, like, why? Let me think. Dikla Watts. Dikla Watts. Am I missing something?
We just thought that poor child would be picked on.
But why would Watts at the end of Dikla be any worse than just Dikla? Am I missing something, or are you just?
I don't know.
I guess
We thought it wouldn't be good, and then
Wait a
I
minute.
liked the name Naomi, but obviously that one's been taken. I did use it, however, for my production company name, and I did Megawatts Productions, and then my husband has an LLC, and he did Zeta Watts. So those were some
Wow.
good versions of the name.
So what is your full name? Like, if people looked you up, like to get,
Reena Friedman-Watts,
right?
is
Because I can
what
see
I
that
go
here.
by.
I didn't know if that was private. Okay, so Friedman was the name you were like born with, right?
Exactly.
You look like a Friedman, and then
So I've been told.
and then Watts is so is your husband Jewish?
His mom is. So yes.
Okay. So technically, and
Technically,
is Watts a Jewish name? I guess.
we're making it Jewish, but no, it was not.
Oh, right, because of his mom. Let me think. I don't know. We'd have to do some math here, but I've been listening to a lot lately. Oh, I guess conservative podcasts and stuff, and they talk about the controversy of like whether, feminists don't want to take their husband's name, they want to stick with their own whatever. But they talk about, well, even if you're keeping your own name, that's that's a man's name from that your mom took from your dad or whatever, or even if you go too back, like eventually you're getting a man's name. So the question is whether you want to identify yourself with your new family, with your husband, or if you want to identify yourself more with your old family. So that's kind of the question they're posing.
The reason I kept my maiden name was because all of my film credits were under Friedman, and so I turned that into my middle name. I actually dropped Joy and added Watts. So it's Friedman is now my middle name.
Right, so you'll still show up. If I'm looking for Reena Friedman, I'm going to find Reena Friedman-Watts instead of Reena Friedman. Yeah, because you don't want to, especially if you've put a lot of work into your career, you don't want to disappear entirely suddenly now that you've got a Watts. And yeah, adding Watts on it, it's almost like your Friedman, but even more electric.
I'm adding the spark, baby.
You just sparked the genius within your name. This is man, it's working on so many levels. So I should introduce you now that we're like 3 hours into the podcast. Today's guest is Reena Friedman-Watts, and she is like a producer, and that's it. That's my intro. I'm going to improvise an intro song here. That's what I always do. That I did once, and now I always do it. So I don't know how this is going to go. Let's see. Yeah, we're kind of in tune. So I'm just going to... Okay, so today's podcast is with Reena Friedman-Watts. Her middle name used to be Joy. But now she likes her new name lots. And she's a producer, and she used to work on the Jerry Springer Show. Okay, give me a word, like an improv word. Any word.
Dikla.
And she saved her kid from being called Dikla because that would suck. Yeah, there we go. I worked on that for 3 weeks, that song. So it came out well. So you were going to name your child, like, first name Dikla?
We just thought that was like a name that we should.
Yeah, no,
use.
you shouldn't. I've never met a Dikla in my life.
I could introduce you to one.
Yeah,
She's actually pretty nice.
Yeah. Oh, you do know a Dikla?
Yes.
All right. Well, I'd like to. Is that a girl's name or a boy's name?
It's a girl's name.
Okay. Well, I'd love to meet a Dikla. I'm sure they're lovely. And then they can be. I don't know. That's the problem with my name is I don't really know. Like, is my last name the Genius? Is my last name Genius, middle name the? Like, if I get married, is it Dikla the Genius? Like, I don't know what happens. But the idea of getting married is so preposterous that it's not really worth worrying about at this point.
I did see that you were posting speed dating things.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping. I mean, I've been doing speed dating for many years. I just am losing hope. Like, once you go on about 1,000 speed dates and you don't even get like a real date out of it, like, at what point do you say this is madness, which is the definition of madness, doing the same thing over and over. um, expecting different results, correct?
I've never done speed dating.
Well, you're married, but I'll tell you, I did like my very first girlfriend when I was like 18, my first kiss. I ran into her, or I guess we went out for a drink with another friend like 10 years later, and she was saying like, "Oh, I've been doing speed dating," and then and at the time she said I looked really good and stuff, and I was still in love with her. And then after we all hung out, I was like, "Huh, if even she's doing speed dating, I guess it's okay that I'm still doing dating websites and stuff." It didn't occur to me that hey, she's doing speed dating, you should ask her out and marry her. And then, of course, she got married and had kids, and she's very successful and all of that. But yeah, I know that's just my speed dating story. So, like, it doesn't mean if you're doing speed dating, you're not a high quality woman. You're the best woman I've ever met. You could be. But yeah, so well, how long ago? Okay, let me ask you this, because you've got your own podcast and you're a producer and everything. Is this going well? Should we just talk about producing, or should we just keep having this random conversation about like? Because I was going to start asking you like when you met your husband and all that.
I love random conversation, and I actually met my husband on JDate.
Ah, a classic. Okay, well, because I was just, can I just reference James Altucher again? Because I reference him all the time. I listen to him every day while I jog, and he was just saying, because his podcast, and I've been trying to figure out what this podcast is, but he kind of encapsulated what his is, and I'm like, yes, that's what it is. He's like, it's just him trying to learn how to live life best, like the play the game of life and be the best person you can be. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. And he said, but the self-help stuff gets boring. Like there's only so many self-help people you can talk to, and basically their advice is always sleep 8 hours and like eat well or something. So at some point it's like and he said, so if you've done enough of one thing, you can start to pivot. You can just talk about what you want to talk about. Have conversations that you enjoy, because the audience will come to you. You can't like seek them out and say, this is what I'm doing. So you just be yourself and talk about what you want to talk about. So I'm happy to have this conversation. And you know what? He also said that the average podcast, there's like 2 million podcasts now, and the average one gets like 10 downloads. So you know what? It's fine. If only 10 people listen to this, that's fine. I don't care. People can listen in, but hopefully, because that's the thing. I want this to be helpful and useful, but again, I think I could probably summarize the things I know about living well in 2 seconds. It's like, well, not 2 seconds, but, briefly, like, yeah, get 8 hours sleep, eat healthy. I'm doing the keto diet lately. You could talk about some ways to make money or whatever, but yeah, you don't need to do the self-help stuff. So just interesting conversations, and maybe we'll learn something along the way, or maybe this is just entertaining and people can kill an hour where they go for a walk. So you met your husband on JDate. JDate is the first website like dating site I signed up for, over 20 years ago. And at the time, I thought this was a joke. Like, I was stupid. I was young. I was like, oh, I'll make a fake profile with like a picture of a doctor walking a horse. Like it was just, oh no, it was a picture. It was a stock photo of a model walking a horse on a beach. My friend and I at work were like, this will be funny. And then the profile was the most ridiculous thing ever. It was like, I'm a doctor and I fly helicopters and I have $10 million and I'm on the whatever. But then he started getting all these messages like, hey, you sound great. And I was like, oh, these are cool women. Maybe I should put a real profile on instead because what is the point of this? So I switched it over. I haven't done as well as that doctor did. But, now that I think about it, I did meet some amazing women on there, like a psychologist that wanted to date me and this beautiful girl that we dated for like at least a couple of years, and I should have married her. But I was always afraid. I was always like, oh no, I haven't fully actualized myself yet. I can't get married yet. Who knows? Like maybe I'm supposed to marry Julia Roberts one day or something. Like I'm not ready. And then of course, it didn't occur to me that time passes and that this is your life, and now they've all got kids and whatever. So you obviously didn't make the same mistake. You locked and loaded on somebody on JDate?
Well, too, I was 26 when I met my husband, and I did the dating thing for a bit, and he was so different than all of the other guys that I dated from LA. He was actually like in a PhD program at Berkeley, and I searched all of California, and what's really funny is that my profile said BUR for Burbank, but he thought it was BUR for Burlingame, which is like 45 minutes from where he was in the Bay Area.
Okay.
So I don't think either one of us like really took it seriously, but he did drive down from Berkeley to meet me, and we met like on Venice Beach. And then a couple of things happened that were like totally out of the ordinary. Frontier Airlines was doing a promotional giveaway on the beach where like if you pretended to be a flight attendant, you did, the emergency
Yeah.
rows and exits and the seatbelt thing, and then you answered a question like which three cities does Frontier Airlines fly to? Anyways, he was up against like three hot chicks on the beach, and he was the only guy, and he answered the question quickly, and he ended up winning a pair of tickets on Frontier Airlines round trip on our first date. I was like, okay, that never happened. So he was like, date two,
Oh,
and I mean, just little things like I lived in a guest house behind like a $2.5 million home, which was a score in LA, by the way. Like if you
yeah.
lived in a guest house and had privacy and didn't have to share laundry,
Hmm.
um, you were living it up. So he like came to my guest house and noticed that like I didn't have a lock on my door, and he was like from Texas and very into safety and like installed a lock. I think date two. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
this guy is different, you know?
Yeah, he's helping you out. He's being the man around the house.
Right, right. And too, like I was kind of
He was literally locking and loading on you. Yeah.
exactly.
I'm
I
gonna
was
lock this
inching
girl
my
down.
way into like, wanting more out of my life. I had hit
Right.
26 and I was like, I've worked on a number of shows and gotten my name in the credits, and why do I feel so empty? And so like I went on this like soul searching trip to Israel, and he was going on a trip to Israel too. So like we went on different trips to Israel, but I felt like our lives were kind of going in the same direction. And so I asked him like serious grown up questions, like, what do you want your household to look like? And he was like one of the first guys that didn't run the other direction. I was like, would you consider, doing Friday night dinner or Shabbos or whatever? And he was like, yeah, I mean, it was kind of like anything I wanted. He was like agreeable to. I was like, oh yeah, this guy's different.
Yeah, I mean that's so good. Like, conversely, I think I was exactly 26 when I signed up for J-Date and did my stupid story, and I had just broken up uh, with a girl that I dated like for a couple of years, and I remember my mom saying, "Just why don't you marry her?" And I'm like, I've already broken up with her, whatever. But that is the path I should have taken. I should like. And I'm remembering I was sort of on J-Date while I was dating her because I was like, well, I got one foot out the door. I mean, there's a whole new world of internet. People, I met this girl at a bar, but who's out there? Whatever, all the stupid stuff. And you were smart because, and what I've learned now is that all that stuff that I thought was important. Oh, I got to make money. I got to be famous. None of that matters. Like
Yep.
it's fun. It's a bonus. But if you've got a partner to do it with and you're raising kids, like that's the anchor. That's what would have helped me live my relationship because I would have been like, oh, now I don't have to waste the next 20 years going on J-Date and Tinder and whatever. Like I've got an anchor. I've solved life. I've won the game. Anything else is bonus. And if I make money, well, now I'm taking care of my family. And even if I decide to get divorced 20 years later, which that guy I worked with did, it's like, well, now he's got 3 grown kids and he can go back and meet new people. But at least he had like he built that life first kind of thing. So life passed me by. So I'm glad you did that all. I mean, that sounds pretty amazing. And you recognized it and he recognized it. Like there's people like me that think, oh, I've got forever. I just like meeting new girls. But smart people will be like, no, this one's pretty solid. Let's do this.
Yeah. And he was 32.
I was going to ask how
So
old he is.
he
So he
was a
was,
late bloomer. I
yeah,
got lucky, you know?
yeah.
Yeah. And
And that
so
was that was like the
he
okay. So
knew
the
right
girl
away.
that the girl that I met on J-Date, um, like most of my girlfriends named Jen, so she was like the second Jen. But I was 32 and she was 24 when we met. I remember there was an 8-year difference, and we were like dated for 2 or 3 years. And I was like, and I just, but I mean, it would have been ideal. Like she was gorgeous, everything I could want, red-haired Jewish, so we'd have little red-haired Jewish kids and all of that. And I just was like, nah, I don't know what. And then I spent the rest of my life looking for a red-haired Jew. Like it doesn't even make any sense. So yeah, so he was late, and that's the thing. And so I mean, I guess at 32, guys, a normal guy would start to think, oh yeah, okay, I've done the playing thing. Let's lock down let's put a lock on the door of a cute girl with a guest house.
You know
So
what's crazy though? Like I would not, and I don't think he wouldn't have been ready I mean, this is my opinion, but
yeah,
had we met earlier in life, like
Hmm.
when I was married to my career for years,
Yeah.
like complete workaholic. Like when I worked at Jerry Springer, like I was
Yeah.
not healthy in a lot of ways. Like
Yeah. Well, I'd already at 26, you already burnt out and had been working for too many years.
it sounds crazy, but
Yeah.
yeah, somewhat that is true. Like I worked at Springer from 21 to 23. I moved to LA from 23 to 26. I worked around the clock. Like when I started, I was working 80 to 100 hours a week. I did not have time for any relationships. I was so self-centered and all about me.
Yeah. But I mean, that's good that you, I mean, at least you didn't wait another 20 years. Like, I know so many women in their 40s or
Oh
50s that
yeah.
are still like, oh my God. And now it's a panic. Now it's, at 26, it's, at least you sort of took the chance to be like, hey, because I keep saying, like, I talked to my friend Dennis, uh, who went to university with me, and I keep saying, oh, why didn't I marry like that first girlfriend? He's like, you were 18, you didn't know. Like, you can go back now and go, oh, why didn't I? But I mean, I'd never even kissed a second girl. I didn't know at the time that this was the best girl I was ever going to meet. So you got to kind of live life a bit and then go, oh, okay, yeah, yeah. So I'm glad at 26 you figured it out, and yeah, and because that's the thing. Maybe 3 years earlier you wouldn't have. You would have met him and go, oh, no, I got to work, I'm not doing all this, and then you would have never, it would have moved on. So you wouldn't have made it, like, it kind of would have been hard to meet him again in 3 years and go, hey, I changed my mind. He'd be like, no, I've already moved on.
It's really crazy too because he was in the PhD program at Berkeley, and after we met, like 4 months, pretty much, I think after we went out for like 4 months, he proposed, and we got
Smart.
married like 4 months later. And then I left LA, left everything that I was doing there, and like moved up to Berkeley. I convinced him to take a master's instead of a PhD and get a job.
Ooh, wow. And is that what he did?
That's what he did. But the thing
Yeah.
is with that is that he really, I feel like, feels like he should have finished that degree. Like he feels like it's something that he missed out on. But now he's working for a company. He's played the corporate game for a long time, for the last 15 years, and he's worked for some behemoth companies. He worked in Silicon Valley. He's worked for GE, Cisco Systems. He's worked for a privately owned company. I mean, I married him without a job. I knew he was smart. I knew he was capable. I knew he was getting a PhD from Berkeley. So like,
Yeah.
and I had a nest egg, but, you know, also he's enabled my career. Like I wouldn't have been able to launch this podcast, produce other shows, work
Yeah.
for big influencers, do so many of the things that I've been able to do because he watches the kids in the evening, or he cheers me on, or he has been my backbone. So
It's
yeah.
funny because I just did my girlfriend, or my first girlfriend. Um, she's like really big in the government now, and I was on a Zoom call for a charity thing with her, and she was the special guest, and she was talking in the call about how it's so great to have a husband that takes care of the kids while she's away, and all this stuff, because like she has to travel a lot for work, and so yeah, same kind of thing. If you can find a husband that can support you on that kind of stuff. A lot of women complain like, oh, men are intimidated by smart, successful women. And maybe some men are like that, but I think that's ridiculous. I would love a woman that's doing her thing, and I'd be there cheering her and helping her and whatever. Ride those coattails.
Hey, I just talked to a guy today who he got married too young.
Hmm.
He got married at 19. And
Oh,
he
wow.
grew up like in the Orthodox Jewish community, and he married a 17-year-old, and they had 3 kids back to back.
Mm-hmm.
And they played, house for a little bit there, but they had no idea what they were doing. They ended up getting divorced. She dropped off the face of the earth for like 6 years, took the kids, really crazy. And then
Yeah.
he had to do a lot of healing work, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
And, he ended up going back to school, getting multiple master's degree, finding himself, finding a career that he loved. But then the rabbis weren't looking to matchmake him. Let's just say that. They basically were like, there might be 3 girls in all of everywhere that we have that would be a fit for you. And like, you're not going to get anyone who's not divorced with children. And he was like, I just don't believe that. And so what he did was he started creating events of his own. Like he knew what he wanted after 10 years. He did a lot of work on himself. He did a lot of therapy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He created a good business. He turned his life around. He did end up reconnecting with his kids and wife after 6 years and paying child support and doing the right thing and all these things, right? But he grew up some. And he was like, look, I know that my girl's out there. I know what I'm looking for now. We got really clear on that, and he found her. So there's
That's
that.
Good. And why were the rabbis like, forget it? Like, because he already had kids, and women wouldn't want that? older women would want that, but I guess maybe young. But why would women care that much? Like, especially for a man, like, would you, say you're a young woman, if a guy's like, I've already got kids, would you be like, oh, I don't want to get on that train?
I think women and men would prejudge you on that if they don't have any. Come on.
I think when you're younger, I guess. Like, once you're older, everybody's
He
got
was
kids.
24 with 3
Yeah.
kids. Yeah.
Okay. With 3 kids. Yeah. So that's a lot, I guess. Yeah. And then women would be like, well, and I mean, the good question is, if you've already got 3 kids and you're 24, why aren't you with your kids? Like, what the hell are you doing now? Like, if you can't even commit to your wife and your 3 kids at 24, why would I move, like, become the same disaster? Yeah. Okay. I'm out of it too. So tell him I'm not dating this guy. I get it. Rabbis are smart. But he made his own thing. And that's the thing. Everybody's got their own story. Like, I had a friend, Phil, who was like a commercial director. When I was writing commercials, he was 10 years older than me. And at 46, I was over at his apartment, and we were on JDate, just chatting with random women on our separate computers. And he started talking to this girl who was 26. And he said, check out this girl. I'm like, yeah, good luck with that. 20 years younger. She's really cute. But they were chatting, and eventually he went to Calgary to see her. And then she moved to Toronto. I never quite figured it out because her parents were very rich too, and he had a lot of money. He was rich, but it wasn't that she wanted him for his money, but they just got along. And then I emceed his wedding after a couple of years, and it was all funny. And he didn't film it. I wish he had filmed it, and I should have filmed it at the time, like with a camera or something. But he's like, oh, I don't want to film this, because I don't want to film the wedding because I'm a director. I'll just be too concerned with film. I just want to enjoy it. But then afterwards, he's like, oh man, I should have filmed your speech. It was so funny. So there's no record of it, but. Then I think they had 3 kids, and then, I don't know, I hadn't talked to him for like a year, like in person, and then somebody messaged me one day and said, hey, did you know Phil's sick? I'm like, what? And he's like he's dying. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, yeah, he's kind of in a coma now, but he might come out. And he came out of the coma for a little bit, and he called me, and I recorded the phone call just because I wanted a record of this to hear his voice and stuff. And he's like, yeah, I woke up, and the rabbi's above me, like doing... I'm like, well, Rabbi, what are you doing here? He's like, well, I was doing last rites. And he's like, oh, that's ridiculous. But then like a week later, he died. He had like liver cancer.
Oh my God, that's awful.
And so like at 52, I guess. I thought he was a bit younger, but yeah, 52. So like, finally spent his whole life, even in his 40s, he was renting an apartment that was really cheap and stuff, but he had millions of dollars. And then so he finally, like with one of his girlfriends, she was like 25. I think he rented a fancy, like a house, and they decorated it. And then he bought a house, and then that girlfriend was cheating on him. Partly because he introduced her to this whole sexual lifestyle, and she was like a Seventh-day Adventist, so some kind of really religious thing, and then that backfired, and then which actually happened to my other friend who got divorced. Like he wanted to take his girlfriend to swingers clubs, and then she wound up liking a guy at the swingers club and left him for that guy. So yeah, don't introduce your women to things that you can't control. Is the lesson there?
It doesn't usually work out well.
No, it's always like, I remember I watched a movie when I was like a teenager, and it was on like late night TV or something. It was about a guy that really wanted to have a threesome with his wife, and so they finally got another woman, and then I for some reason this burned into my memory, and like he leaves the room and he comes back and the woman's still with the other woman, and they're just going at it, and he's like, I guess I'll make a sandwich. Like he couldn't compete, and then she just wound up like always dating this woman or something. And again, yeah, like don't men want it one way. They're like, yeah, I just want to be able to sleep with a million women, but you can't like anyone. Anyways, what was my point there? Oh yeah, I guess it's the point, like everybody's got their own journey, right? Like he'd finally, because he was like Mr. He had a BMW, very sophisticated in the city, always going to the finest restaurants, but he moved out to this girl's city, like living in the country, and had a farm and a truck, and everybody's like, I can't believe Phil is like a farmer. But yeah, I died at 52. Like so you never know, I guess. Everybody's got their path. Like you can say, oh, I got married too young or too old, or I guess you just keep living. But the thing, like on this podcast, James Altucher show, they were just talking about why we're genetically, like why we age. Because it used to be, you'd have a kid at 13, and then at 26, your kid would be 13 and have a kid. So now if you're still alive, you're taking food out of your grandkids' mouths. So basically at 26, you start declining and people age and then they die. Like there was no evolutionary advantage to living forever, I guess. So, I mean, even 13 used to be normal to have kids. Like, so
I am from Kentucky, so my grandmother was 41 when I was born.
Wow. Oh, when you were born, right? So I mean, that's the thing. And that, because like I've met a lot of women these days that are like early 40s and then they're like, oh yeah, I've got my grandkid. Your grandkids, wow. Which I mean, it doesn't happen to everybody, but I remember when I was 20, I was talking to my friend Ben from high school, and he's like, yeah, 27's the time to settle down. I was like, 27? That's like, it seems so old or whatever. But now I look back, I'm like, yeah, you'd have your fun, and then you lock it down. Because I never did the math, like to say, okay, if I have a kid at 27, I'm 27 years older than my kid. So when they're 27, I'll be 54 or whatever. Or if I have a kid at 27, at 37, they'll be 10. At 47, they'll be 20. Like a normal human being. Like my parents had me when they were like 25 or whatever. That's like I never sat down to say, oh, well, you know what? At 40, I'm dating a girl. Like if I don't lock it down, like am I going to spend the next 10 years looking for someone? Like what is the plan here? Like at this point, you've dated hundreds and hundreds of women. What do you think you're looking for that? Or is it just the joy? I remember I went to a therapist once because my girlfriend was like, go to a therapist, figure out why you can't commit to me. And the therapist was French, and she was like, why don't you, maybe the joy you get from staying on these dating apps and meeting, why don't you try going on LinkedIn, like networking for your job? And maybe you'll get the same rush. And I was like, yeah, maybe, but I didn't do it. But now I realize, yes, of course, that would have been more exciting to me. I'd love to network. Like I like meeting people and always be working towards something. But it didn't have to be always looking for a date. Like so I could have said, yes, lock down the family, check. And now work on messaging people with your screenplay or messaging people.
So I wouldn't recommend trying to date from LinkedIn. That's like a thing not to do.
No, my point was it's not. Instead of dating, use LinkedIn to network business wise, like people to interview for a podcast, and then that way you get the satisfaction that you're getting from always trying to date people, but you can commit to your girlfriend.
Are you looking?
Like for a woman? Yeah, I mean, yes.
Tell me what you're looking for.
It doesn't really matter what I'm looking for. I think I need to make myself a better person first, and then I mean the problem is the older you get, the options are less, like I mean if I'd married my girlfriend when I was 18, you're both smart, you've both got potential, like it's amazing, you both have kids, you can grow a family, right? When you're older like me, like I'm 49 now, like
well, you look younger.
Yeah, so and thank you, most people say that, but it doesn't really count for much. Like
how do you feel like you need to get better?
I don't know. Well, okay. So here's how it works. If you're a man, all right. Well, it depends. What do I want? Like, and I'd still like to have kids. I think. Like, I mean, because otherwise, I don't need a girlfriend just to hang out with a girlfriend. But the problem is, most women my age, well, they've had their kids and they can't even have kids. So you have to get someone younger. But when you're younger, if you're 25 and the girl's 25, you've both got potential, like you're equals. But if a guy is 49 and wants a girl who's like 10 years younger or something, you need to bring something else to the table. You need to,
yeah, what do you bring?
No, I don't bring much right now. So, I mean, other than, well, it's all the stuff that I thought and that was valuable when I was young. Oh, I'm funny and I'm creative and I'll write love songs for you and I'll draw cartoons of you and all this. I mean, that's all cute. But
that
that's
is
not,
cute.
I
think
know.
You should lead with that. But what are your breakers?
What, like, you mean what?
What are your absolute no's?
I don't know. It used to be like smoking. I don't want a girl who smokes or even used to smoke, and I broke up with girls for that.
I used to smoke.
Yeah, well,
I haven't my whole marriage though.
That's good. Yeah, well, so the first gen, we were at like her parents' house in her small town at some point. And then
I worked for Springer and smokes were free, and that was being social. So I did smoke a lot.
Well, there you go. And so one of this house party with her family once, somebody yells, "Hey, Jen, you gonna come back in the backyard for a smoke?" And she's like, "Shut up." And I was like, "What?" And that's when I found out that when she met me, she heard or somehow knew that smoking was a deal breaker, so she quit. And then that was it. But because I knew that she had smoked a lot, I was always in the back of my head, well, now what if she gets sick one day, or what if our kids aren't as healthy because of the smoking? And I couldn't really get past it. But now I look back, everybody's got some. I mean, I went to bars for 10 years where they're smoking at the bars. Like it's, like secondhand smokes. We're all damaged goods. You look back and you're like, how to find somebody that you love spending time with, that conversation just flows and you love each other like deeply. And also we were very creative together. We made a short film together. I wrote a love song for her and it was this whole thing. And look back and you're like, oh, that was nice. That was so comfortable. Like life was so good and comfortable. And instead I
Do you
chose
think
not to.
marriage is comfortable?
Um, I don't know. There's a feeling I get, like I don't know what it is, but I think back, like the third gen. After I kept breaking up with her and getting back together with her and like trying to get her back, and I remember that one of the times I tried to get her back, we were sitting on a corner, like on a curb somewhere, and I just said, "Being with you, it's like being on vacation. Like I visit your apartment and I feel warm and comfortable, and it's just happiness." And the closest I can get to that now is where if I'm with my parents or my sister in a living room and we're just playing a game or having a meal, or I'm visiting my niece and nephew and I'm like, oh, this feels right. Like I'm not on edge. I'm not on a dating site like begging women to like me and feeling like I'm like it's like, no, this is so I imagine that that's what a family would be like. It would just be this warm bath of love that you feel like, okay, this is right. And if I'm spending time with them, that's productive. Like now I feel like, oh, if I'm not working, if I'm not doing a podcast, if I'm not making money, like my time isn't being well spent. But if I had kids, well, taking my kids to the park is a thing that's useful because I'm helping them grow. I'm spending time with my family. If I'm going into a movie with my wife, we're doing something together. But I won't watch a movie now alone because I feel like that's a waste of time. So I feel like it makes everything worthwhile. Like it's having a family, it makes whatever you do with them or for them or even for yourself suddenly have a meaning. Yeah. But I don't know. Is it not comfortable? Am I wrong? It depends, I guess.
Well, tell me about your parents' marriage. Is it comfortable and warm? Is it something?
No. Well, I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't be talking about my parents. They don't. I mean, no. But
I mean, only 20% of marriages are happy.
Yeah, and I'm sure half of them get divorced. I mean, there's a stat about that. Yeah, so I mean, it's not necessarily. Like, I mean,
how you're describing it to me sounds like honeymoon phase.
Maybe, but I mean, I dated each of those gens I dated for 3 years at a time, and it always felt good. The only reason it didn't work is because I kept going, maybe there's other people. Like I felt like I'm scared. I'm scared if I commit to you, what's life? Like what is life if I'm not going to a bar or trying to meet girls somewhere? Like does that just mean that's it and now I die? Like I was so scared. I didn't know what meaning life would have if I'm not just running around imagining where is life going. But as my dad always says, if you don't choose, that's a choice. Like then you get nothing. But yeah, I mean, of course, I've dated people like that I can imagine. Oh God, if I was married to them. Here's how I define love. And I wrote this on Facebook once, and I got a lot of likes and stuff. It's like if you are with someone where you don't feel alone anymore, that's comfortable. That's love. Like I can imagine being with girlfriends and stuff where I still feel like I'm alone. Like they're not with me because they really love me. They're with me because for whatever reasons, they need a man, they need money, whatever. Like, but the gens and stuff, I really felt like, I'm not alone anymore. Like I feel like I'm seen, and it's not scary. And so yeah, I mean, I think, as long as I could get over my own hang-ups of like, I can't commit, marriage would have been good, and they would have loved me, and that would have been it.
So we need to find a Jen.
Yeah, I keep drawing a cartoon.
Oh my God, I have a cousin, but yeah. I think she's 30. Her name is Jennifer, and she's single.
Yeah, well, that's
she's in New York.
I mean, it depends how rich you are, right? Like, if
she's an attorney, she does well.
I don't mean how rich she is. I mean how rich. Like, if I want to get a girl that's 19 years younger, I gotta have Elon Musk money, right?
Probably true.
But that's my question. Would that work? And I guess it would. I mean, it depends what you'd want. Well, yeah, no. I mean, Steve Martin had his first kid at 67. I was just reading, and I think on Saturday Night Live last week, he just said he's got a 38-year-old wife, and then I've been reading, been following Bob Saget's widow on Instagram, and so he was 65 when he passed away recently, and she's 42. So I was like, okay, what is that? 15. That's like 23 years difference, right? So for me, that would be a 26-year-old, right? So, but you got to be Bob Saget, or a bit older, like maybe a 42 and a 65-year-old is different than a 49 and a 26-year-old. Like once a woman is 30 or older, maybe she's sort of it depends how desperate they are as well, right? Like it's at 30, do they still like going to bars and they've got their pick, or do they go, you know what, I've dated men, I know there's not much out there, I want to have babies right now, if they're smart, And I didn't realize at the time, like when I met the first gen, we were probably both No, wait, I guess I was pretty young if I met the second gen at 32. In my mind, we're both 35 all the time, uh, but okay, the third gen, she was 6 years younger than, no, 4 years younger. So maybe I met her at like, she was 34, I was 38, something like that. Um, and at the time, I was like, oh yeah, no, it's still like, but no, at a girl like 35, like your eggs start disappearing, and so I mean, that's when it
Ooh,
showed
what
a lot
about
of
somebody who's frozen their eggs?
yeah. I mean, they say that. I mean, there's a lot of that. And then it always comes down to the question of, well, but is the wife young enough to take care of the kids? All this nonsense. I don't know. I mean, in the end, I just want someone to not feel alone with, and I feel like we could figure out what to do. I don't know. Get it? Who knows? I mean, a lot of people say at my age I shouldn't even have kids. It's not fair to the kid. I'll be an old dad. Like, would I have the energy to run around? I mean, technically, I could still run around with my niece and nephew, but you know, again, I never did the math. Like, if I want a 10-year-old kid, if I started now, I'll be 60 when they're like it. Like it
My
takes
husband's
time for.
48 and he has a 2-year-old.
Yeah, so there's possible. Like, I talked to this guy Dean Graciosi, who's
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So he's got a couple of kids from a previous marriage, but he was saying to me that he didn't get married to his or have his current kid with his new wife who's until he was 50. So I guess he's 52 now, and his wife looks very young. I was like, oh my god, but she's like 35 or something. And yeah, so it's possible. But again, he's got Dean Graciosi money. So, but that's why I'm working on myself, and that's why I've realized, you know what? I mean, I've been on the dating sites for 20 years. I know what that's like, and I know what the people are, and I know that the woman I'm going to be with is a very special woman. Like, we're going to be both smart and creative, and we're going to, but like, and that's hard to find anywhere. Like, regular, like, so I just need to do my creative stuff. It's like even James Altucher was just saying in terms of the podcast, the benefit of doing a podcast is that you're expanding your circle. Like, more people are hearing you, the right people will listen and then reach out to you. So in work wise, but I think it might happen in terms of dating as well. Like, the person I'm going to
Oh,
meet.
yeah.
And that's how I met. Actually, that's how I met third gen. Like, I was in the art. There was an article about me in the newspaper about. Actually, I was being interviewed about an environmental dating site. No, it was about how do environmentalists meet women, or meet their true love, and this was about, and I was saying, oh, it's hard to meet another environmentalist. It was kind of that thing. And she saw the article and she's like, oh, but this guy's just looking for a girlfriend, because she's a big environmentalist. But she was like, oh, he's just looking for a date. But then a year later, there was another article about me, about how I walk around picking up litter everywhere. And two of her friends called her and they're like, did you see this guy in the paper? Like, he's just like you. He picks up garbage and stuff. She's like, this guy again. Okay, I better email. So she emailed me and said, it's a fan letter. And we met for dinner. And she drove to the restaurant, but she didn't tell me that. She hid her car because she didn't want me to know, because I'm like, oh, cars, they're bad for the environment. But yeah, we sat down and boom, like for 3 hours, just talking nonstop, like just flowed. And it's like, and that was right. And it just, and then, but I just assumed at the time, like, oh, yeah, another girl, I'll never see her again. So eventually she called me again. She's like, you want to get together? I'm like, okay. And then years later, she was like, so if I hadn't called you, that would have been it? I'm like, yeah, I just never expect anything to happen with anyone. She's like, well, good thing I contacted you again. Like, she was almost thinking, well, if he doesn't call me or email me, I guess it's over. But I was waiting for her to do it. So the best women I've been with have also been the ones that pursued me. And I know they say a man's supposed to pursue a woman, but at least in my case, I find that no, if the woman at least expresses interest and picks me out, they're more the one for me than me trying to find someone who's kind of not interested unless I beg them and beg them and beg them. Like, I don't understand that whole thing. But again,
So that's good to make note of, too.
yeah.
I actually had a real life 40-year-old virgin on my show. And after
man
the
or a
show, a man.
Yeah.
Although after the show, I had a 41-year-old woman reach out to me that was interested.
In the Virgin.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is like a Sleepless in Seattle thing.
Totally. Real life.
Should we quickly say who the heck you are and what you do? Like, now that we're 44 minutes into this, like,
Sure.
so you, well, just so people, okay, so you have a podcast. Oh, I guess we sort of talked about that. Yeah, we did that. You're on the Jerry Springer show. So you're a producer.
Got my start at Jerry Springer. I went from intern to producer in one season. Then after Springer, I moved out to LA, worked on a bunch of reality TV shows, met my husband on J-Date, joined corporate America for a bit, and then became an entrepreneur about 3 years ago.
Should we talk about how old you are, or say that? Does it matter?
I'm 42.
Okay, so your husband's 48.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. I guess no. We already said you were 26 and he was 32. So yeah, never mind. We did the math. Okay. Um. Okay. 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 And you went to school for creative stuff, or how did you get into
Yeah,
Springer?
I went to actually two different colleges. I had a singing scholarship to the University of Charleston in West Virginia. There's a story there.
Oh.
I went to a youth performing arts high school, which I auditioned for and didn't get in on the first try. And my dad went to the head of the music department and was like, she'll learn how to read music. She'll learn how to sing in a foreign language. She'll learn how to play piano. Give her another shot. And so I did that over a summer. I learned how to sing in Italian. I learned how to sight read music. I re-auditioned. I got in, and I never felt like I got accepted because I got rejected that first time. And
Mm.
so for 4 years, I had the same teacher, and he was a very tough teacher, and I never sang out. I just tried to blend in, although I was surrounded by extremely talented people. And so I continued to take voice lessons. I continued to stay in the game. And then my senior year, Nicole Scherzinger was a year older than me. Um, yeah, she was a year older than me. And so like the last month of college, you like can audition for schools. And she was in the audience and she sat in the front row and she cheered me on and she told me just to focus on her and, sing at her. And yeah, I ended up getting two offers at two different art schools, and I took the one at University of Charleston. And I was the only Jewish girl in my whole college. I ended up teaching Sunday school at one of the temples in town and getting in with the music director, who I've now also recently reconnected with, and just so cool because I got to tell him like, wow, you took a risk on me, and you just I feel like he was partially responsible for, the direction that I went in my career. So that was really cool.
The guy that your dad convinced to take you, or
Oh
somebody
no,
else?
he actually passed away during COVID. I really wanted to connect with him.
Mm.
He was a legend in Louisville. His name is David Brown. They've actually like named the music department after him. He performed for Stephen Foster. He made so many incredible musicians. I mean, just for years he ran that music department. Nicole Scherzinger, she was the lead singer of the Pussycat Dolls.
I was gonna say I know that name.
Yeah,
Uh,
she's super famous. I think she's worth like 300 million now. Anyways, she is the one that
Loosen up your buttons, baby.
exactly. Yes.
Yeah. She's big on
So
TikTok now. She's back.
she's huge.
I'd marry
Anyways,
her in case she's listening.
I know I would love to interview her as well. She's on
I
the
said
bucket
marry
list.
her, but
Oh,
I
you'd like
didn't
to
do
marry
this.
her? I'd just like to
Yeah.
interview her and we catch up and thank her for
Yeah.
being with me on that college day and like giving me the confidence to sing out.
That's
Um,
insane. That's a story. So this is all before Springer and
this is before
Berkeley.
Springer, yeah. So I
Oh,
went to the University of Charleston for 2 years, and it was a small school, but it really like gave me confidence because
yeah.
I was kind of like a big fish in a little pond. But after 2 years and literally getting like a 4.0 and smoking weed and partying and getting in trouble, I decided to transfer to Purdue. And so I got into Purdue University. And then while I was there, I got a job, a couple different internships. One, I got a job at an NPR station reading the news and the weather, which was awesome because this was pre automation and I got to learn how to run a radio station manually.
Yeah.
So that was great. And then I took an internship at the local news station where I got to work on some local commercials, run the chyrons, floor direct, learn how to edit, just run the audio board, just all the behind the scenes of working in a news station. So both of those were completely invaluable. And then I drove up to Chicago, got an interview with WGN. Again, didn't get the job. And then while I was up there for that interview, I saw that Jerry Springer was looking for interns. I saw a flyer in the same courtyard as WGN. I walked across to NBC Tower, got a hold of the intern coordinator, and started there 2 weeks later.
Wow. That reminds me of. Do you ever listen to the Kathy Heller podcast?
I used to work for her.
Okay, so she always interviews Sherry, the Oprah, who was the executive producer, Sherry Delato or something like that. Anyway, so Sherry talks about how she got her first job at Oprah, and it was something like that. She applied for some job, and then they forgot, and she didn't get it. But then, and then they found her resume like a year later in a closet or something, and they called her. She's like, "I already applied this other job, but maybe I should take it." Whatever. It just sounds like that kind of story where you're like, "Oh, this little internship thing," and then it leads to this big thing.
I've had like a bunch of those actually. I interviewed for a post production supervisor role. I mean, I became a post-production supervisor of Nanny 911 after applying to a guy for an entire year through the Producers Guild. I think I like totally wore him out. This guy, Rusty Austin, he was amazing. But he was a seasoned producer, had worked, you know, as a post-production supervisor for years. And I finally just sent him like a funny one-liner. I said, since Bill Clinton's no longer looking for interns, this job sounds like fun. And he was a huge Clinton fan, so he totally went for that. I went in for an interview with him and he hired me that night. I ended up starting that night, working from 7 at night till 7 in the morning for an entire season. So I worked third shift with the editors and really learned what a post-production supervisor was just by where the editors needed me.
Yeah, I mean, this has been, it's funny. Like you lived the life I should have lived. Like I always wanted to be in radio. Like when I was working my first advertising job, I was sending like cassette tapes to radio stations.
I did that too, an air check tape. I made one of those.
Yeah, like I went to it, and again, I think I contacted like a morning show or something, and they said, "Well, show us what you can do. Like go out and interview kids. Like ask them about the teachers' strike or something." So I brought a tape recorder with me and I went to the mall. But I stupidly, that jerk that I think it was his idea to sign up with a fake profile on JDate, he also said, "No, it'll be funnier if you act like the kids are on strike." And so I asked all the kids, like, "Why are you on strike?" And they're like, "I'm not what?" And whatever. So I sent this tape to the station and they were like, "This is just kind of mean-spirited. We don't think you're a good match." And I was like, "What?" Like, and I was like, it wasn't my idea at all. And so I never got into radio. And then when I was 27, I messaged this morning show and I said, "Can I come by?" And the host in Toronto, Humble Howard, was like, "Yeah, come by." And I don't remember why I didn't. I think I was like, "Oh, it's too early in the morning," or just something stupid. And I just never pursued it. And then I wound up talking to him 10 years later through somebody at my work, and I mentioned that, and he's like, "Why didn't you ever come by?" And I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Well, you're too old now. Like at 40, you're not gonna, what are you gonna do? Like go work in a small town, work your way up for 10 years? I'm like, And then I talked to him a few months ago because I apply for radio jobs all the time, and finally I got an offer basically in the Arctic. And they were like, "Come here, you can be our morning show host." And it's like, it's a town of 5,000 people. And I was like, I don't know. And partly I was just scared because I was like, I'm going to be 50. Like they wanted me to commit to a year. And I didn't know why. I figured out later that they were afraid that they actually thought I was really good and I would just go to Toronto or somewhere bigger soon. And they want me for at least a year. They don't want to have to look for somebody else again. But I was like, I'm going to be 50 in a year. Like, is this my life? Like, am I ever going to meet a woman in the Arctic? Like, I was just so scared. So I didn't take it. And I talked to Humble. And I said, "What do you think of this?" And he's like, "Well, you're not, what's the point? I mean, you could blog about it. Like you could do a podcast about it."
Oh my God, I totally would have done it.
Yeah.
I actually interviewed for a radio station not that long ago. I think it was 2007. It was after I tried corporate America for a bit. I was like, I should just go back to like my media roots. Like that's what I enjoyed doing. And I went for this interview downtown Chicago, and it was for an associate producer role at one of these stations here. I don't even remember which one. It's funny. It kind of reminds me of the story that you were just saying about how you tried a story because they want you to tell a story.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I interviewed with this woman and she was like, "Okay, now, yeah, come up with an example of a story that you would tell on the show." And on my way to the train, I ran into this chick and she was holding a sign and it said, "Pregnant, homeless, need a new pair of shoes and a new pair of pants, just got hired at Sonic." I was like, shit, I need some new shoes too. Excuse me. So,
now we're going to get demonetized on YouTube. I'm just kidding.
So I took her across the street to an Old Navy that I saw, and I bought her a pair of shoes and me a pair of shoes. And I said, "When you wear yours, you can think of me. And when I wear mine, I can think of you." And I sat down and listened to her story, and it was horrible. First of all, she had like a fresh scar on her face from like an abusive relationship that she just got out of. Both of her parents were dead. She left a kid behind with like the abusive ex. I mean, crazy story, right? And she got knocked up in Grant Park by somebody homeless. Like she totally got, yeah, like raped in the park. I mean, all of her IDs stolen, the worst story. And I literally took a picture of me with this chick and our new shoes, bags, and I sent it to the news station. And I was like, this is a crazy story.
Yeah.
And yeah, I literally got no response from
That's it.
the news station. And plus, like during the interview, I think they told me it was like $15 an hour. And I was like, I got to take the train every day. I've got 3 kids. You're paying me $15 an hour. I got to join the Writers Guild. I was like, heck no, this isn't worth my time, right? Like maybe if I was just starting out. Right. It's not the money. But anyways, I post this story on LinkedIn about what happened and how,
Yeah.
sometimes if you give to others when you yourself are in need, good things happen, right?
But only if you post about it on LinkedIn. That's what you
Right. I
yeah.
got like 50,000 views on the post,
Yeah.
zero response from the radio. And I was like, what in the heck? But
Well,
then too, I started realizing, I was like, oh, this is what my audience wants from me. This is
mm,
the kind of story that touches people's heart. And so then I really started posting differently on LinkedIn and started understanding that audience better.
yeah, I mean that's what James. I don't talk about this guy like he's my wife, but whatever. He keeps
I'm gonna
saying that.
tag him in this.
Yeah, please. He followed me on Twitter, and I'm like, what? Like, why? I don't know why. But he keeps saying that like he was a financial writer,
Mm-hmm.
and he didn't do that. You know, it was okay or whatever. But once he started talking, like he finally wrote an article about how he failed, like how he lost $1 million and
I
was
love
went
that.
broke, and then he said that's got the most views. And so basically,
Totally.
so now when he's become big because he's very honest and writes about how he keeps failing and coming back, and that's what people wanted to hear from him. As opposed to just hey rah rah everything's good and here's how I made it and stuff. And that's what he was just saying this week too about how he doesn't want to interview just people who are success after success, right? Easily. He wants to talk to people like, what's your story? How did you bounce back from something? How have you failed? That kind of thing. And and you found the same thing. And I think in this modern internet age now, yeah, like you can tell stories on LinkedIn and be bigger than this legacy media radio station that doesn't want your story or whatever. So, 50,000 people, they'd probably kill for 50,000 likes on any post their radio station posts.
Yeah. And what I was going to tell you too, one, I don't think you're too old to get into radio. And two, what you're doing with this podcast, like demonstrating your talents with comedy, with playing music,
With
and how
cartoons.
with cartoons and how conversational you are, you can build your own community. And even from that episode I just did with Jerry Springer where I interviewed him, he was saying that networks are having trouble keeping up with creators. Creators are the new media. All you got to do is build your community. And
Yeah. No,
yeah,
that's what I realize now. Like, Joe Rogan's the example of that. Everybody keeps saying that's why
yep,
he's always attacked by CNN and stuff, because they would kill for his ratings. People want to
totally.
listen to him, and a lot of times I just need to get out of my head that, well, why didn't I do this 20 years ago? Because the internet didn't exist 20 years ago. Like I started when I was 20. I was in a play in university. I answered an ad in the paper, and I was in this play, and I drew a little cartoon on the card for the director. And this woman in the play was like, "Hey, I like your cartoon. That was very fast and nice. I'm hosting this community cable show where it's called Garage Sale. People call in and they buy and sell things. Like it was the Craigslist before, So she's like, you can sit beside me and do a cartoon. So people would call in and say, I'm selling a couch, and I'd be like, shh. And then after she takes all the information, she's like, and what do you got, Josh? Oh, well, here's Bert and Ernie sitting on the couch with Frankenstein, whatever. And then people would start calling in and just saying, I just want a cartoon and stuff. And that's what I had to do back then because there was no internet. That was the only way to be seen. But people would call the station and say, my wife and I are doctors and we don't watch community cable, but we tune in for this Josh guy. It's so amazing. And then, a girl met me at the subway station once because based on what I was saying, she figured out the direction I would be taking home. And, that was the original internet, right? There was no other way to reach someone. And I keep saying, well, why didn't I pursue? But I did what I could at the time. I sent out VHS tapes to apply to be a DJ and stuff. And I was never going to be, I started going bald when I was 18. So I wasn't like a young, I didn't have the look for MTV or something. Like it was kind of a struggle. But I always thought, even when I was like 10 or something, I remember a girl in class going, my dad says you remind him of Woody Allen. And I'm like, well, who is Woody Allen? Like, what is this? But he looked exactly like me when he was young. Like we were, red hair, Jewish, glasses, so I always thought that's who I am. And like when I feel bad about getting old, I go, you know what? Larry David is still doing it and stuff, and he's cool, and people like running into Larry David. And then it's always in positive enforcement to hear like somebody like you say something like this. Like the other day, last month, I commented on some guy who just showed up in my Instagram feed. I think he's like 60. He's like this really fit black guy who's like an actor in LA, kind of like, I don't know what. He's like a lot of exercise stuff, like how fit he is. But he looks like he's pretty big. Like he does a lot of TV shows and stuff. And I left a comment, and he's like, I just watched a few minutes of your reels about, actually your 30-second thing about your keto diet. Like I was filming shirtless videos of me showing here I am fat, so that we can chart my progress. And he's like, you are amazing. Like at 49, you can still do it. LA needs people like you. You're so personable. Like even in 1 30-second thing, your personality is so good. I'd love to be on your podcast. Like all of that kind of stuff. And I just need to remind myself of that. And even, when I was talking about how when I'm with my family, I feel comfortable, or I imagine that's what wedding, like even just doing this interview now, it comforts me, right? Because there's so much negativity out there.
I'm like, who do I know? We should do a show where like you come up with, kind of what you're looking for. And I don't
mean necessarily that, finally I found my Reena, I've got to steal you away from your husband.
No, I'm like, who in my audience would be good? Like, it'd be so cool if you met somebody through our shared audiences. That would be amazing. Maybe. I would love that.
I almost wouldn't want to inflict myself on a woman. Like, if there's a woman out there that I would want, I feel like she deserves better than me.
No.
I'm crying. Anyways, what was my point? Oh, just doing the podcast. Like, I feel good about doing this. Like, it takes my mind off things for an hour to talk and let other people hear me. And so that's why, yes, I should be doing this. I enjoy it. And, yeah, I mean, even when I hosted talk radio in Toronto for a bit, I guess I was 35 or something at the time, and I didn't pursue it. They switched program directors, but people were calling the station and emailing and saying, you know what, I like I like this guy better than the host, the regular host. Like I was filling in and stuff, and they would like, and so that was touching. They said, I like how he talks about how he picks up litter. Like I'm blind and I pick up. One of the callers said, I'm blind and I take my recycling out, and it makes me feel good to know that you're recycling and stuff. I don't know. I love reaching out to people, and I don't want to feel like I'm too old to do that. I feel like I want to be like, you know what? Because when I was young, like Woody Allen's probably. When I was 20, Woody Allen was maybe the age I am now, and I wasn't thinking, oh, he's too old, I don't want to listen to this guy. Like, I would have been an honor to meet him and stuff. And this is probably not something to put all my eggs in this basket, but on the James Altucher show the other day, he interviewed Tony Robbins and this other doctor about anti-aging and stuff. And the stuff they said, like even that you can do now with stem cells and everything, it's amazing. But within 5 years, the medicines are going to be unbelievable, like anti-aging medicines. And they've talked to two respectable scientists separately who say that within like 11 to 12 years, we'll hit longevity velocity where, because right now, for every year you live, science advances the average lifespan by a quarter of a year. But within 12 years, they'll be advancing lifespan faster than you're living. So theoretically, you've escaped. You could live forever. Like if, for every year you live, if they advance years by 2 years, so I mean that gives me a little bit of hope. Like it's just like, okay, do stuff now, because in 10 years you'd be like, oh damn it, like I'm gonna live another 50 years. I should have been, as Gary Vee would be saying, it's like you got so much time. Like there was a comedian I just saw on Instagram Reel. He was just like, impression of Gary Vee, and he's like got his hat on and everything. He's like, yeah, caller, how old are you? I'm 17. Yeah, F you. Okay, that's great. All right, next caller. It's like, and that's basically sums up him. Like anybody he talks to is like, why are you, you're young. Shut up. And so I try to watch people like him he's like in his 40s, but younger than me, but him or Dean Graciosi or Tony Robbins, people kind of my age, because it's depressing if you just look at young people. You want to see people yourself doing things.
Speaking of James, I mean, he didn't get into comedy until he was 50, right?
Yeah, he was just saying today on his podcast that, because he was, the one I was listening to today, he was interviewing Brian Keating, this physicist that they check in on every time, and Brian was saying he just turned 50 this year, and
he just started podcasting a year or so ago, Brian. Now he's like number one in the science category. Yeah,
so that's huge, and James so Brian was asking James, like, what...
tag him in this too.
Oh, yeah, I'm for sure. The trick is... You could tag James and maybe he'll see you, but if you tag somebody, slightly less famous, then maybe that person will respond, kind of thing. So I've got some famous people I've got to draw cartoons of that have responded, so you'll be seeing those.
Oh, cool.
Brian was asking James, like, if the pandemic, like, is there anything different that you're doing now that you wouldn't, like, maybe, because it kind of, the pandemic made everybody realize, it compressed things. Like, it was like, whoa, like, life is finite. Like, what do I really want to be doing? And, like, and James said, yeah, like, a lot of things that would have happened in 10 years, they happened in 2 years. And so James was saying, yeah, like, I don't do comedy anymore. I kind of was like, like he did it for 6 years. He bought his own comedy club, and he's like, because when the pandemic started, he was touring through the Netherlands or something doing comedy clubs, but now he's not really interested in that anymore. But he's glad he did it. What was my point? Oh yeah, Late Bloomers. I mean, that's his whole book, right? I discovered James like maybe a year ago.
Skip the line.
Yeah, I was watching a webinar for like, I don't know what it was, like a podcast conference or something, and he was talking about this Choose Yourself book about how it's like, you know what, you can do anything with the internet these days. I decided I'm going to design a logo, and I made my own line of pajamas or something, and I was just like, there's a guy who understands that I just want to keep doing different things and stuff. And so I took out 3 of his books. I didn't read them. They've been returned.
I read Skip the Line in like 2 days.
Yeah, my mom saw them lying around. She's like, you've had these books for 3 months. I took out Marie Forleo's Everything is Figure-Outable, and then I took Choose Yourself, Skip the Line, and he had some third book that I was like, I'm going to read all of these, and so I guess I should still. But maybe he'll just come on my show and tell. I mean, I could almost hear his voice. Like he's like, what, you know what to do. You could read more self-help books, but like and I think that's the thing I could sum up. Like if I was going to do an advice show for people, almost everything would come down to, what to do. The genius is within you. Just spark it. Like do it. You know that you should be going to bed at 9 o'clock, getting 8 hours sleep. You know what to eat healthy. You know that if you want to do something, just do it. If there's somebody you want to talk to,
drink water, take vitamins, sleep.
Yeah, the exercise, and then just in terms of even getting ahead, it's like, it's not complicated. Email someone. If you want to start a podcast, watch a YouTube video on how to do a podcast and just do it. And that's how I started mine. Like I researched podcasts for 10 years. Like I was, I took a day-long podcast workshop, all this, and I still couldn't figure out how do you get a podcast on iTunes. And then just before the pandemic, I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take the audio from this rant I just did about the new Indiana Jones movie, and I'm going to sign up for a podcast hosting service, and I'm going to follow these. How do I get this? It took me 2 days to figure out how do you make a file, how do you put a picture up. But even the YouTube videos I was watching, they were obsolete, and they were only like 5 months old because iTunes changed over to Apple Podcasts. So things keep changing anyways. So you could spend all your time. I remember I was reading an article once about indecision, because that's been sort of the central issue with my life. And it was talking about how even if you make a decision, you can never know if you've made the right one. Like you'll never know. So you might as well just do something. And also things change. Like by the time you decide on the perfect stereo, because you've been researching it for 5 years, technology is different. None of your information means anything. So there's no point in going like, what's the perfect podcast? It's like, podcast might not exist in 2 years. Like just do whatever it is now, become the Vine star, because it's going to be TikTok in a month. Like it doesn't matter. And, in a way, I wish I had made it big younger, because it feels like, say you want to be an action star like a Schwarzenegger, you need to start when you're young so that you can still do them later, because people are nostalgic for you and they know you. Like you wouldn't start as an action star at 70. And then I was interviewing, I don't know if you know Mark Breslin. He founded a comedy, he's
I don't
Jewish,
know him.
but he founded a comedy chain in Canada called Yuck Yucks. So that's where Jim Carrey was discovered. He discovered all these big people. And I interviewed him as part of a charity Zoom call recently. And I said, by the way, do you think at my age I could? He's like, no, because it would take you 15 years to find your voice and to get discovered. And so there's no point in even. I'm like,
okay, I don't agree with Yuck Yuck.
No,
look at Brian Keating. We just mentioned him.
Exactly. Look at James Altucher would say, no, skip the line. That's ridiculous.
Yeah,
and also,
yeah.
I mean, even conversely, against his own statement, there's this woman in Ottawa, Sharon. Is her name Sharon? I can't remember her name. But she just won the Yuck Yucks contest at age 52, the summer contest. And she didn't start until like 2 years ago and took the same classes I've been taking and stuff. So what's he even talking about? I got 3 years on her. Also, things happen so fast. Even just at the very beginning of the pandemic, there was that woman who was lip syncing to Trump speeches or something. She sort of knocked them out and stuff.
Yes.
And then within 2 months, she got huge, and she's got a talk show in LA. And, of course it helps to be a young, attractive woman or whatever, but
that definitely helps.
Yeah, but I mean, of course it helped. But I remember, okay, so here's something. I don't know, like 15. I say everything's 15 years ago. I feel like it all is, but whatever. So let's say 15 years ago, I was in LA. I was shooting a commercial I wrote, and a producer said, here, talk to this guy. You'll like him. David Steinberg. So he used to fill in for Johnny Carson like a lot. Like he's a really big comedian. He's got a TV show where he interviews all the greats like Seinfeld and whatever. He's like this legendary comedian. And somehow he talked to me on the phone for a bit. And I said the same thing. I said, I don't know how I'm going to make it on YouTube. At this point, I'm 35 or something. And I'm like, I don't know, I'm too old. Like, you know, there's this woman called Script Girl on YouTube. And she talks about, like, she just talks about the latest scripts. Then I think she's like an assistant for a script, whatever people are, you know, talent agents for writers. But she just goes crazy cleavage. Like, just, it's all cleavage and her talking about script stuff. And he's like, okay, so find a hot girl to sit beside you or whatever, you know, like, what, you know, you don't have to be the hot young girl. Like, if you've got, and that's why I keep thinking too, like there's always another hot young girl, but to be interesting and smart and creative, I'm not saying those girls can't be that as well, but
And make her name Jen.
yeah, and make her Jen and just marry me. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like if I met another Jen, I'd feel bad.
Seeking
like,
Jens that want to be a co-host with the long-term goal of getting married.
The stupid thing is I had those. I mean, the first Jen, we made movies together. Like, and then the third Jen,
I'm ready now.
Yeah, I know. Like, I haven't had sex in 10 years. And
really?
Well, not literally, but it feels like that. Like, I haven't had that girlfriend for 10 years. And we were going to do a show called Josh and Jen Go At It, like a saucy name, but we'd be on the bed just arguing about politics or whatever. It was so good.
Damn, you had something there.
I had it. And she's got, you know, and I'm still pining away 9 years later now. I remember on my 40th birthday, I didn't invite her because I was like, I don't know, I might pick up at my birthday. Like, what was I thinking? And that was it. I remember that's it. Like, if I'm not inviting her to my birthday party, and she would have been...
You're like, if we're both not married by 40, remember?
Yeah. I mean, she was 36. This was it. I'd broken up with her and gotten to bed, like, over and over and over for 3 years. I wrote a song to woo her back and all of this. Like, it was all... She was... I mean... And that's I'm so sad that I left that, but you just can't keep going. Like,
tag her in this too.
No, she will not. I have reached out over the years, like every now and then I'll send an email or
memes,
or try to add her to Instagram and nothing. Like she's blocked me. She's gone.
Oh no.
Because, I mean. Because what's the point? Like, I mean, she really, really wanted kids and everything, and she met this guy who loves her and committed, and who knows how many she's got. But that's it. And this woman I used to do... Okay, so I met this woman in stand-up comedy class, and we started little YouTube shows. This is before you could do more than 10 minutes on YouTube, so if we'd ramble for 15 minutes, we'd have to do it in 2 parts. Like, I'd have to cut. It's all ridiculous. But I introduced her to Jen, and Jen was just obsessed with this woman. She said, she's so funny, she's whatever. And then other best friends. And then I'm out of it. But the other 2 Jens, like the second Jen, she's responded a couple times, like, oh, hey, how's it going? But I don't really know what's going on. I saw her at a coffee shop a couple years ago, and I thought she was ignoring me. And so but then she's like, oh, you should have said hi. And I was all embarrassed because I was fat at the time. And still fat, but I was more fat. But and then the first Jen, we had a fight about Israel on Facebook. Like, she's... They're all the Jens are Catholic high school teachers, except for the middle Jen, who's Jewish. But she was posting about those poor Palestinians. I was like, whoa, hold on. You don't, like, I was trying to explain exactly what's going on in Israel, and then I just removed her. I was like, and then I was like, why?
Yeah, that could be a decisive,
I know, but
divisive conversation.
But I know I mean, we were already broken up anyways. It was still nice to have her on my Facebook, and she's a good person. I don't think she was anti-Semitic. You know, wanting to bear my Jewish children. But I guess they wouldn't have been Jewish. But anyways, I finally got her back. Like, I mean, not back, but she added me to Facebook again. So we talked once or twice, and it felt very comforting because at least there's somebody out there who, you know, I mean, I stupidly lost her, but, you know, I do know I forget what the point of that was. Why did I go on this tangent? There's Jens out there. I had the Jens. I had all the Jens. I would have had 20 years of Jens, and now we'd have little Josh, like Sparks or whatever, like Jens and stuffs. And anyways, I don't want to put this out to the world like, oh, please, a woman. Like, it's like, I just want to be the best person I can be. I want to help people out there, and maybe that'll give me the same comfort instead of like selfishly, like, I'm going to find a woman and make her be my wife. It'll be like, you know what? I'm here to give advice to people. Young people, old people, I'm here to help everybody. spark the genius with me, or whatever. If I come up with a new name, I'll help you make your good life, or whatever Oprah would say. Live your best life. But there seems to be a whole, like, you know Kathy, and you know her sister?
I was
Yeah.
wondering if you've dated her, since she's dated probably 1,000 people too.
Yeah, we have not dated. I have had people message me asking, "Do you know this girl?" I'm like, "Yes, I know the girl." I can't even remember how we started talking. We've talked on the phone and stuff. And it's funny because I mean, she does sound like if we were going to find me someone, she's like a
She's frozen her
podcaster.
eggs.
She what?
She's frozen her eggs.
Right, exactly. She's frozen her eggs. She's a comedian, like an actor. She makes
Yep.
funny TikTok. Like she's basically the female me. She's a singer, all of this.
Yep.
But she's not interested. I mean, I've never asked, but she's aware of me, and she's had people message her and say, "Do you know this guy?" And she said yes. So it's one of those situations where
She's never inquired. And you
yeah,
want somebody who will.
I don't necessarily want it, but yeah, I mean, she knows I'm here, so we message all the time.
Okay.
So if she was interested, and that's fine. I want somebody like who would be like, "Oh my God,
We should hang out.
Yeah, exactly. I shouldn't have to beg. And then
Maybe
and then
she feels like that.
yeah, but she will have to beg because that's what I'm. No, but I think we talked on the phone for an hour once and stuff, and actually because she was trying to set me up with. No, yeah, I think what we talked about. Some woman messaged me, saw me like in a singles group, and then texted me, and it just sounded like she was fake. I was like, "Can we video chat? Like, you sound." And she's like, "No, I don't have any internet." I'm like, "What do you mean you don't have any internet?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm in the desert." I'm like, "You're in the desert? Like, what? Okay, you know what? You're another fake weirdo." And then she's like, "All right, well, you're screw you. You're not trustworthy." But I could see that somehow I figured out that she was like mutual friends with Kathy's sister. So I messaged Kathy. I'm like, "Can you just tell me this person's real?" She's like, "Oh yeah, no, she's real. And right now she's in the desert in Israel and there's no internet." I'm like, "Oh crap." And then so her sister messaged her and said, "Listen, it was just a misunderstanding. Spark, it was like he didn't think you were real." And she's like, "Well, I just don't want to be with someone who's not trustworthy and stuff." I'm like, "Well, that's ridiculous. I mean, you should have to blindly trust someone on the internet with some weird." But also, she says, "I wasn't interested in him anyways. I was thinking about him for another friend of mine." Whatever. The whole thing, and now that I've told this story, I sound like a petty jerk that I'm probably ruining my chances with every woman on earth. But yeah, so I've been around there. And then there's Randy Zuckerberg. Do you know her?
Yep.
Yeah, so you're kind of all that same. You're all around, in the same age range, like Jewish girls who love musical theater and
Yep.
podcasting. It's
Yep.
like, there seems to be a type of that thing. I wonder why that is. I don't know.
I don't know. I
Well,
guess
Jews-
it's the time that
Jews-
we were in.
Yeah, and Jews are creative and
Yeah.
smart, and I mean, maybe it's racist to say that, but I mean, we outperform.
When I first moved to LA, I was like, "Oh my God, the first place I've lived where it's cool to be Jewish, my people." I was
That's the
like,
thing.
I'm leveraging that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, whenever I've been in LA and I like look at Starbucks and everybody's literally on their laptops working on a screenplay, and I'm like, these are my people. They're creative. Like, it's a whole city of this.
Totally.
And then also of the Jews, like in my city, there's no, there's a couple of Jews, but if you're Jewish, you go to LA, you go to New York, you go to Israel. And then I remember being in Israel going, "Oh my God, everybody's Jewish here." Like, there's no feeling bad about being Jewish. Like, they're just all like, just weird. I wrote this book when I was a kid called Alfred the Ant, and it was about an ant who wanted to make friends. And I guess I can spoil it because it's 42 years old. But at the end, he, so he's going around trying to make friends, and he's like, goes to the mommy, and mommy almost puts a piece of cheese on him, and goes to the daddy almost steps on him, and then the little boy puts him in a jar. So he escapes, and he goes out to the wood. No, actually, he goes outside. And some other ant said, or somebody tells him, "Listen, you got to go out to the woods. You'll be happy." He's like, "Really?" And he goes out to the woods, and there's like millions and millions of ants. There's ants everywhere. Now he's happy. He's with all his ants. So I don't know. I don't know if I need a million ants, but I guess that's kind of like that. You go there, and it's like everybody's like you. Like, that's nice.
It does feel different. I know. The first time I went to Israel, and they're like, "Welcome home." I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome."
Yeah. But that's almost a bit cultish. It's like, oh, now do I have to stay, or I'm not a good Jew? Like, what do I got to do here? I don't know.
Both of my sisters stayed.
Yeah, I mean, I can see. And I always joked around, like, how when I was in New York and I saw these hot Orthodox chicks walking around with these just fat, ugly guys, Not
That's
that
a
I'm
thing.
Yeah, okay, so all right. And then I just thought, oh, that's how you do it. Like if you're, if these Orthodox girls need an Orthodox guy, there's only so many of those. So I thought that's why I went on JDate. I thought at least, if I'm on some website that's for everybody, I've got nothing. But if a woman needs a Jewish guy, there's only so many. So maybe I can outperform and get a better quality person who needs somebody like me,
The
right?
thing
That was
is that the Orthodox ones, like very few go on that site. They probably go
no,
on
that
like the
oh,
Frumster and like,
no. And I'm sort of half joking.
but
Like I'm
that's
not gonna
funny and true.
Yeah. So I was just, I mean, the just being Jewish was my realistic thing. But
Angle.
I was like, yeah, but I was like, if I could be a really Orthodox, then I could get a hot chick. But I mean, I don't know how I would fake that. And I don't really want to
But would
live
you
that life.
entertain that? Like, what if there was an Orthodox girl that was kind of like rebelling a little or rebelling and wanting to go back, but like wants somebody who would keep Shabbos?
Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the thing. Like, I mean, when I've been with the Gens, I've realized, you know what, whatever they're into, I'll do that. If they really like cooking, I'll cook or baking or whatever it is. So I guess if I met some girl and it's like, wow, we really get along. And because I've always been Mr. Science. Like, I don't care about religion or whatever. But now I find it in the same way that I've realized how comforting family is now. Religion's kind of comforting. Like, I don't really care about being Jewish, but Jewish is kind of like it's your community. Like, you've all had Hanukkah and Passover together, and like you've got this thing in common with each other. Even though I've met a bunch of Jews that are jerks, like it doesn't mean we're all good people. Like that jerk I used to work with, he's Jewish. But but there's still some comfort to that. So it's like, you know what, fine, we'll keep Shabbos. Like I listen to the Ben Shapiro show every day, and I'm like, he talks about he doesn't do stuff on Sabbath and stuff. I'm like, sure, why not? Like it's a code of life. On the other hand, in my elderly wisdom, I don't want to waste time doing anything that's not productive or that I don't want to be doing anymore. Like it's almost like I shouldn't read Skip the Line because I should be spend an hour doing a podcast. Like James Altucher was saying, it's funny that the big spoiler here is that James Altucher doesn't exist. I am James Altucher. No. He was saying that like people are like, oh, I don't have time to write a book. Like, how do you write books, James? He's like, well, if you don't watch Game of Thrones, you've gained 183 hours. Like, like you could do. It's like, so, would I want to actually spend my time? Probably I don't have a lot in common with, somebody who wants to spend all our time doing whatever people do on Sabbath. I don't know. On the other hand, I wouldn't want to limit it, so who knows, right? Like I've kind of learned, because I used to try to push people to be like me. Like I was really into the environment and really stressed about that. Like the second gen would pick me up at the park and ride, and I'd be all mad because everybody's idling their cars, and I'd be like in a bad mood. And she's like, I can't live like this. And now I'm like, why was I trying to force, or, like the first gen had all these books in her trunk. And I'm like, why are we driving these books around to this wedding like that we're going to? It's going to be extra weight. You're wasting gas. And I made her move the books out of the thing. But now I'm like, why was I trying to change her? Like, just enjoy who they are. Don't impose yourself on people. Like
That's a really important thing about marriage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truthfully.
And now I'm like
the fact that you get that now is big.
I don't want to change them because I want to enjoy who they are.
Yep.
Like I want to be like, it's like Star Trek, like the prime directive. Don't interfere with the culture, because then who are they? Like, do I want to be with someone who just, folds her clothes like I do, or all this stuff? I used to get in so many stupid fights with like first gen. Like she wanted her air conditioning blasting, and I'm like, this is a waste of energy. We should just leave it off. But now I realize, first of all, that the colder it is, the better you do sleep. First of all, and who cares about the whatever global warming I was trying to stop and stuff. It's like, let her have her air conditioning. Like, just enjoy that that's who she is. And that's a cute little, like, I don't want to change anything. I almost wouldn't want to date a woman just so I can observe from afar and just see exactly who she is naturally. Like, I don't want to affect it. But that's ridiculous, of course. But hopefully I could.
It just totally reminds me of like my husband telling me to shut off the treadmill because it's a energy waster, or like to unplug things or to turn off lights, and some of those, like if it's the treadmill and it shines a bright light and is going to wake up a child, or if it's a big energy sucker, and right now, God, the gas is like how much, so what I mean, like it makes sense. Funny, though, but I've like trained myself to do some of these little things that annoy him.
Trained yourself to do them to annoy him?
No, because they do annoy him. Like, I do shut off the treadmill. Like, sometimes
exactly.
Shut off the lights. Like, little things
good.
that he's commented on. I'm like, okay, if that's not that hard to fix, but other things I'm like, no.
Yeah, no, stick to your guns, because I I ruined so much of my life. Like being like I used to. Idlers bothered me so much. I would make a handmade flyer, like saying "Stop idling your car; it's bad for the environment," and I would hand them out everywhere I go. And like one time, I put them on a truck, and a tow truck driver chased me around. And
Oh
but
my
then he,
God, too bad you don't have footage from that. That's awesome.
yeah. But then what happened? I think I emailed the cable company and told this story, and then he emailed back and said, "Listen, I'm the guy. I feel bad. I read your flyer. I thought you were just like vandalizing my. And you're right. I shouldn't have been idling." So some people changed, but yeah, like I used to. Okay, so speaking of going on a trip right away, the first gen won a trip from the shopping network or something, and they were sending her to LA for 2 days, and I went with her, and she's like, "I want to take you." Like we had just met, but she's like, "I don't." Like I'm afraid if you hand out your idling flyer to cars, we're gonna get shot. Like you can't walk around LA with your flyers. I'm like, okay, so I tried, but it was really hard. But now I'm like, what? What was my problem? Why was I trying to tell third gen don't drive your car? It's like I loved your car. Oh, and Jan was the very first, not the first, but like the one my mom was like, why don't you marry Jan? And Jan wanted a Jeep. She just wanted a cute little Jeep, and she was gonna be Jan driving her cute little Jeep. And I was like, no, you should get like a little car that's more fuel efficient or an electric car or something. And she's like, but I want my Jeep. And, you know, I'm sure hopefully she has a Jeep now. I'm like, why didn't I let her have her cute little Jeep? Like, what the hell is my problem? And what did I think I was going to solve climate change? Like, and aren't we all supposed to be dead now already? Like, I feel like Al Gore kind of, not that I want to go on a right wing rant.
Hey, it
stuff,
might still
but,
happen.
Yeah.
With all that's happening in Ukraine.
What? Like climate change or just war? Like end of
War.
the world? Yeah. Oh no, we're gonna have a war, and that'll destroy us before global warming. Ugh. But then, did you hear William Hurt died yesterday?
Yeah, I
Or
did.
today? Yeah, and not that I know him or have any connection or whatever, but he's only 71. I'm like, ugh. Just every time someone dies, I'm just like, what was the point of anything? Like Bob Saget took a picture that night. He died. He's like, here I am. You know, he was 65. He's like, I just did a comedy show, and I feel like I'm 20 again, workshopping my stuff. I love it so much. And then, boom, gone. I'm like, what was the point of anything? But
you sharing this journey right now is the point of you having gone through all of this.
And that's what I try to do, too. Like, and I noticed that's what Tony Robbins does. Like, somebody got me tickets. I used to write commercials for like Visa, and Visa was sponsoring the launch of his, or they sponsored a documentary movie theater in Toronto, and they were just going the Tony Robbins documentary. And so I was watching the documentary, and then we were up in a little room with her. I know, yeah, we're at an hour and a half here, so I'll let you go. And you know what? We could continue in part 2. But and his story is, Tony Robbins, I tried to dissect what is his secret, and just from watching the documentary and then watching his other stuff, everything comes down to turn your negative into a positive. So you were, you know, abused in this cult. Now you can help other people that were abused in a similar cult. So whatever it is, you know, the pain, all my stuff that happened to me, it's because, and now the point was, and the benefit now is that now I can tell my story and help other people. And, you know, if they listen to this for an hour and a half, maybe they don't have to waste 30 years and they'll just lock down their gen or whatever, right? And then I've changed a life.
Yes. And can I just say one more thing? Everything that you've experienced up until now has like prepared you for what great is around the corner.
Yes, exactly. Like I had to wait until technology existed so we could do this call. Like even 5 years ago, my friend Tony and I were like, wait, let's do a podcast. Well, it's going to cost like $5,000 in software. Like couldn't figure it out until now. It's now that we were able to do this. And I didn't know these things until now. Like now I figured it out. Now I can share things with everyone. So who knows? But thank you for being on the show. Hopefully you'll come on. I mean, people should listen to your podcast. What is it called? Better Call Daddy?
Yes, that is right. BetterCallDaddy.com.
I don't know what that means, but everybody should go listen to it and listen to her interview with Jerry Springer, which is a legendary TV show. And maybe and then maybe my future wife is listening to this, and then we can all do a show together. We'll be like the 3 girls, or we can double date with your husband, or who knows what.
That would be amazing. I would love that.
All right. Well, shalom, and I'd like to say the date. Today is March 14th, 2022. Just so anybody, they're like, if something crazy happens on March 15th, they're like, why didn't they talk about the aliens landing? Well, because it hadn't happened yet. That's what I like to just reference things.
Josh,
all right. Well,
you're amazing.
Thank you.
I really loved connecting with you. To be continued for sure.
Thank you. Shalom.
Shalom. Bye.